you thinking? Tell me just what's on your mind. What you drinking? Is that whiskey on your...
LA, what is up? What is up? We are back. Welcome back to the Showtime Forum podcast. I am your host, Ray El Barabon, and along with me is my co-host, Javier. Today is going to be a good one because not only were the Lakers able to create $32 million to spend on a max free agent, but we're joined with ESPNLA's very own Andy Kamenetzky. What's going on, AK?
Hey, how you guys doing, man?
Good, man. Well, hey, man, thanks for joining us today, man, especially so last minute.
Yeah, not a problem, man. Plus, I don't want to hear the just whining from Bergman. You
can't talk about our boss like that, man.
No, I can. No.
Yeah. Well, at least not on.
He's only my boss on certain days for a few hours a day, and that's it.
True.
Yeah, now that's not the time, so watch out.
Yeah, at this point, he's owned me for since December of last year, I think. So, yeah, I wish I could be in the 3 hour to 4 hours category.
Nice.
Before we get the ball rolling, let me remind our listeners where you can reach us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. That'll be under Showtime Forum. I think everybody's pretty familiar with that by this point. But let's get into your article, man. You dropped an article on The Athletic the other day, right? Actually, yesterday.
It's either yesterday or 2 days ago. It's impossible to keep track of time at this point.
Yeah, everything's blending together, right? So, I was reading the article, and there was a couple of things that I kind of saw in there that were really interesting. First, I want to give you some props for. There was in the beginning paragraph, you go in and you label the front office as smartly constructing this roster, which I haven't heard a lot of.
Well, no, I said they had the opportunity to smartly constructed. There's literally no roster at this point. True, it's down to 4 people now.
Yeah, there's still work to be done. We got the cap space situation figured out. We got Anthony Davis here, but the real work's going to come with role players, man.
Yeah. There's an opportunity here, though, for them to construct this smartly, and now it's up to Rob Pelinka and everyone surrounding him to show that they're up for it.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I know you were talking about, the priority obviously is going to be is going to be shooting, defense, and the depth. I don't know how much depth we can really get. I think that's going to really depend on just how many guys are really going to be ring chasing, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's interesting because the piece that I wrote was before today's news about the deal sending Isaac Bonga, Jamario Jones, and Mo Wagner to the Wizards, now expanding that trade for Anthony Davis to a 3-team deal, and that with Anthony Davis waiving his trade kicker gives the Lakers $32 million. So that changes the equation to some degree in the sense that now guys like Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, they're now more realistically options, which depending on how you feel about that is either the best way to go or the Lakers would be better off, just going for shooting, defense, depth, and, adding more pieces. But either way, they just have more options now. When I wrote this piece, I was largely of the opinion that the All-Star names were pretty much unrealistic to begin with, or at least there wasn't an immediate path to that. Now there is. There's not a lot of them necessarily that I'm dying to bring into the fold, but it's at least now a much more realistic opportunity. At this point, it feels like a given that they're going to be getting some meetings with these guys.
So you still not hopping on the Kawhi train, I see, huh?
Oh, no. Kawhi was my number one. Kawhi is a no-brainer. I had listed Kawhi as, if you can figure that out, you do it.
Of course.
If you can bring in Kawhi Leonard and you're teaming him with LeBron, Anthony Davis, and Kyle Kuzma, I honestly don't care who 5 through 13 are. At this point, it's irrelevant. You could put the 3 of us and the best 7 players at ESPNLA 710, and that team's winning a championship. It really doesn't matter.
Oh, of course. But obviously, if that happens, are you going to be able to tolerate Greg at the station?
Boy, man, he has dug in his heels on that prediction, man.
Oh, definitely.
I actually go ahead.
I was going to say it's funny, yeah. I know for sure you did mention Kawhi as number 1 because he was also the headline picture on the article, so that's something that we saw there. If you can touch a little bit more on the players that you thought maybe would be a good idea for the Lakers if you were to break down that cap space and kind of what you feel may be a right fit with LeBron and AD.
Well, I think you got to put the focus on guards and wings because this team is so front court heavy as it is. I mean, they're the three players who matter. LeBron, AD, and Kuzma are all front court guys. I mean, LeBron can serve as a point guard, but he still is part of the front court.
Right.
Some of the names I had towards the top of my list, not counting somebody like Reggie Bullock, who I actually think would be a good re-signing. But I some of the cap mechanics on how that would work and the timing of it, to be perfectly transparent, I'm not exactly sure when the best time to do that would be.
Yeah.
But I think a guy like Patrick Beverley would be a terrific pickup for the Lakers in the sense that he helps the guard play, helps the defense. He's a very good shooter. He's playoff tested. Nothing is going to intimidate him.
Nothing.
And he's somebody that, he's not a high-end point guard, but he's somebody that can competently run an offense, for a little bit of a spell if you need to give LeBron a breather. But he's really comfortable operating without the ball. Like last year on the Clippers, as a point guard, his usage percentage was 20th on the team, which is insane when you think about it. I think Bojan Bogdanovic from Indiana, I'm not exactly sure what he would cost, but he's like one of the quietly most efficient scorers in the league. He's 50% from the field, I think 42.5 from three, 80 something at the line. He's better around the rim than I think a lot of people realize. And he's actually a solid defender. Like, he's not a lockdown guy, but he's not, at minimum, isn't going to be a liability. And that's somebody that would just feast on open looks with LeBron and Anthony Davis out there. I think Seth Curry is interesting. I think Danny Green, if he didn't stay in Toronto, is interesting. Darren Collison, I think, is interesting.
Yeah.
And the ability to break up, theoretically, $32 million if the Lakers don't end up getting one of these A-list guys, all of a sudden I think you're in a position where you could be filling out the roster pretty nicely and in a way that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I did notice that you were. It looks like you're not all that high on trying to bring back KCP and Rondo as well. Which I mean, I get the thing with Rondo. I get the thing with him, but I think a lot of his play last year actually was dictated by the situation that they were playing in. I mean, it was a terrible situation to be at least post All-Star break, and I think a lot of the times he kind of feeds off that stuff. But KCP, please, I'm with you with that. Just please keep him away.
I mean, look, KCP, I guess, as I said in the piece, depending on how options maybe become limited, and if we're done paying the clutch tax, I mean, I guess he could be. I mean, and it seems like it's never ending, but I wouldn't be outright against it, depending on who else is on the roster.
Yeah.
But I would target Reggie Bullock ahead of him without even thinking about it.
Agree.
Yeah.
Right. There's also, another interesting part that I saw was the Morai. There's an opportunity to bring maybe one of the guys in. I mean, I believe that they're solid players. They won't have too much of a high price. That's, a little bit of a need on the team, and I think they would fit well with both LeBron and AD.
I would target Marcus a lot further ahead of Markieff because he's a better shooter. And I think, I could be incorrect about this, but I think he's spent a little bit more time along the wings than Markieff has. And like I said earlier, this team has more of a need along the wing. It's interesting. The Morai are clutch clients. And I don't even mean that like in a clutch tax type way. In this particular sense, it might grease the wheels if you're interested. Again, I would also target Marcus because he's got more playoff experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at this point, it's looking like the Lakers are going to start to be presented by Clutch Sports. You might have to start. You might start seeing that on the headliner.
Start seeing.
Yeah, right.
Officially.
You might start seeing it on the jerseys instead of Wish now moving forward. We never know.
Well, and there you did bring up a couple of not a couple, but a few interesting players. At least a few that I know I've been pushing for Trevor Ariza for a couple years now. I mean, I love Trevor. I was really heartbroken when we weren't able to bring him back, especially with the fact that he got the same deal that we gave Ron when he came in. But I know you touched on Collison. Nerlens Noel is out there. I think he'd be a great addition. Whether he's willing to whether he's willing to come at the price tag we need him at, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the list that I did for The Athletic of 14 free agents that I think the Lakers could be targeting. A couple of the bigger names like Kawhi Leonard, again, a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Klay Thompson and Chris Middleton, if they very surprisingly became available, to me, even with Klay's ACL injury, they're so easy to plug into what you do. And I think there really needs to be a premium on simplicity because I think LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to play extremely well together and can complement each other really well.
Yeah.
But by and large, this stuff takes a minute to get going. So to me, the more simple you can make this, because LeBron and Anthony Davis is a pretty damn good foundation to begin with. I think players who put that premium on simplicity are people that you should be targeting. I mean, like, I'm not as wild about Kyrie as a lot of people are. You know, I mean, I get the pluses, and he's talented, and I know he's played with LeBron, but Kyrie is not simple to add to anything, and he is also not easy to make happy. It's a lot of the reservations I have about Jimmy Butler. You know, he is not somebody that you just drop into an offense, drop into a system. You know, his talent acknowledged. He's really talented. He's a really good player. He could really help this team defensively, but he's another guy that seems difficult to make happy. And I think there's a premium, especially knowing that at least for a year, Golden State is not going to be Golden State. And things are so wide open. The ability to hit the ground running as quickly as possible and, you know, try to grease those wheels is really important.
Yeah. To me, the most important thing here is that we have the cap space. I mean, when we were starting to look at everything from the beginning, is we had, around 23 million that we were going to play with. There was uncertainty about Anthony Davis even waiving his trade kicker. Now that we have the 32 million, I mean, even if you strike out on a big man or a big superstar, I mean, you just have options. That's the most important point, that now we have those options.
Options are the lifeblood of good decisions. Like if you're Rob Pelinka, if you're this front office, just the flexibility that comes from those options puts you in a better position to make the best decisions possible.
Of course. And, touching on the simplistic angle you were talking about, I mean, Corey Joseph is like, if there's anybody who's the definition of just a simple guard, it's Corey Joseph. I love Corey Joseph's game. I think plugging him into that, perfect. Initiate the offense, does what he needs to do. Not a bad shooter.
Yeah, he's not a great shooter. The biggest reservation I would have about Joseph would be he's not a great shooter. He's not awful, but he's not great. And he hasn't done much starting over the course of his career. Like I broke down his splits, and for whatever it's worth, relatively small sample size, his splits as a starter are better than his numbers as a reserve. But he's never started, I think, even 25 games in a season. So, like, the idea of how ready he would be to be the team starting point guard, even acknowledging how much of that ultimately ends up LeBron, I think you have to consider with Joseph. But he's a smart player. He's a good defender. He's been through a lot of playoff battles. He's definitely somebody that I'd be keeping an eye on.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And I know you touched a little bit about just kind of you were saying a little bit of how you were a little wary of restricted free agents, just because of the way, the money's tied up and whatnot when you put that bid in. I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I know D'Angelo Russell's been in the limelight for the last about two weeks or so. And I mean, I'm not saying anything about D'Angelo. I would gladly take D'Angelo, but for the same reason you touched on, I don't – if we're pursuing D'Angelo Russell, I'm assuming we struck out on all our top tier guys.
That probably is the case. But the flip side with D'Angelo is – there's a chance he could end up unrestricted if the Nets end up getting Kyrie Irving, or Kyrie Irving plus, superstar to be named later. Mm-hmm. And if he becomes unrestricted, that makes it easier in terms of how you go after him, your money not being tied up. But I don't know what D'Angelo's market's going to be as an unrestricted free agent, because, Utah in theory could have been a team interested in him, but they traded for Mike Conley. Mm-hmm. Indiana's been linked to D'Angelo, but they've also been linked to Ricky Rubio, who is now going to be available. Chicago drafted a point guard, correct?
Right, I believe so, yes.
So, bringing in D'Angelo, even acknowledging, he is a good outside shooter. He can be as much of like a combo guard. That seems like an odd play for them. So some of and Phoenix looked for a second like they were clearing space for D'Angelo, and then they ended up using it on Aaron Baines in a way that nobody can seem to figure out. Phoenix is going to Phoenix. But I don't know exactly where D'Angelo's options come from, which while bad for D'Angelo, could maybe be beneficial for the Lakers. And depending on the money that it takes to bring him in, even if he's not as good as Kyrie Irving or Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, he's going to be less expensive. So the opportunity to add D'Angelo plus, a $10 to $12 million role player, there's an upside to that as well.
Yeah, a name that you just brought up right now is Jimmy Butler. I mean, that's kind of slipping through the cracks now a little bit in LA just because of the whole Houston situation that's going on right there. Maybe he's going to go back to Philadelphia. We'll see. But do you feel like maybe if we strike out on Kawhi and let's say Kyrie, even though it's probable that he might go to Brooklyn, do you feel like there should be a cutoff at that point to where we split the money, or do you feel like Jimmy Butler would also be a max guy?
Well, I think the Lakers consider him a max guy. I mean, I've been pretty consistent on the idea that other than a few superstars, I would split up the money because I don't think a third superstar is necessary. I can see the arguments for bringing in that guy just in the sense that it's a talent-driven league. Depending on who you're bringing in, you might be setting up well for life after LeBron.
Right.
Somebody like Kyrie is young enough that in theory you're setting up a future with him and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
I just feel like even at this stage of LeBron's career, things are going to revolve around LeBron. So you have to be thinking about how you're serving the LeBron era. And we've already burned 1 year of it with nothing to show for it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, again, that argument for making this as simple as possible, particularly in a year where it really feels wide open. I've got some concerns with just how Jimmy Butler would fit in. Like, I mean, he's somebody who has the ball in his hands a lot. There's a lot of dribble to his game. He is not a bad outside shooter, but he's not a great outside shooter either. I mean, he's not somebody that you can't leave alone, from the throw. You guard him, but he's not somebody that's going to terrify you out there, And LeBron in a lot of ways would be spacing the floor for Jimmy Butler when the idea would be the reverse. Like you want your players spreading the floor for LeBron. Last year, one of the issues the Lakers had was very often LeBron was spreading the floor for these other guys because the team was so bad from outside. So again, I understand the arguments for bringing in the third star if you can do it. I feel like this team is going to need depth. They're going to need more players. And I think it's also important to remember Kyle Kuzma. He's not as good of an overall player as Chris Bosh was as the proverbial third guy, or even Kevin Love was as a third guy. But Kuzma will give you third guy scoring. He is a legit 17 to 20 point a night guy. He can do that. Mm-hmm. And that's some of what you'd be looking for from this guy in the first place. Yeah. So I just think it's important to remember that.
Well, I mean, and honestly, I think Jimmy's not a great shooter, but I mean, who else wasn't a great shooter? Dwayne Wade. I mean, if you go back to the Miami days, if you were to bring Jimmy in, I mean, he would be the poor man's Dwayne Wade, essentially. Plays gritty defense, maybe not the best outside shooter in the world, can slash the basket, and then you got Anthony Davis kind of filling that Chris Bosh role, obviously to a better extent.
But see, that's where I think it gets tricky, is the idea of Anthony Davis, in theory, getting relegated to that role. And also, when the Heat did this, it wasn't a league that was predicated as much on three-point shooting, so I think you could get away with it more. But it's an interesting comparison. I mean, there's obviously upsides to bringing in Jimmy Butler.
Yeah,
he's really good.
Of course,
really good
on both ends. Yeah,
of course. But
he killed it in the playoffs. He was really good.
That's the thing I love about Jimmy. Jimmy's got that dog in him. Just kind of like we were talking about with slipping my mind right now. Point guard for the Clippers,
Patrick
Beverly. Sorry, Patrick. But yeah, I mean, same thing. That dog in you. When you get in the playoffs, that's where it counts.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever, it doesn't really matter at this point to me. Whichever way this roster ends up being constructed, just because I think the regular season is just going to be more of a marathon. We're going to try to get through with as little injuries as possible and whatnot, and to get to the playoffs, right? And the playoffs is really where we're going to see these guys, cash out. And Jimmy Butler, I mean, every time I've seen him in the playoffs, he takes it to whoever's on the other side of that line.
No, and look, that's the argument for Jimmy Butler or any of these star guys is in the playoffs. That stars often dictate what ends up happening. You need, role players or, high-end role players to step up and do their part. Kawhi was the star of this postseason, but guys like Kyle Lowry, who is, an all-star, but he's a descending all-star, or Pascal Siakam, who I think will be an all-star, but he's not quite there yet. Mark Gasol, like guys like that also had their moments as well. But at the end of the day, it really is a star-driven league.
Of course.
And it's a talent-driven league. That's ultimately the argument for those guys is once you get into the playoffs, it becomes so hard to guard teams and scheme for them the more star power you have.
Yeah, talking about the playoffs here, I think that's going to be really important as well as going to be on the defensive end. That's going to be a key part that we do have to cover because losing Lonzo, we're losing great perimeter defense. Was an excellent lockdown defender. Right now we're working with, Kyle Kuzma and LeBron, which, LeBron can turn it on when, the playoffs come and he can do it once in a while. But we do need somebody or at least a couple guys who can maybe defend and help out in the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I targeted on my list, by and large, are somewhere between solid to very good defenders. And I agree that part of it's important because, you don't want to create a situation where Anthony Davis just has his head on a swivel constantly because he's not getting enough support from the perimeter down. Yeah. So, I mean, this stuff is important. I mean, even when you acknowledge where LeBron is in his career right now, and he understandably isn't going to play, balls to the walls defense for, 48 minutes or however many minutes he's on the floor. Like, Kobe didn't do that towards the end of his career. Yeah. Like, you don't expect that. But there's still a price that's paid for it. Like, it still has an effect on the court, even if you understand why it's happening. And, and guys have to account for it. And it makes it harder to get your defense where it needs to be once the playoffs begin if you're not regularly, playing good defense. It's hard to just turn it up, particularly for a team that will have spent no time together. Like, there's going to be no continuity for this team whatsoever, which is, again, a big reason why I think simplicity is important.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there is no continuity with this team.
Well, and I have no problem with simplicity just because last year, that's the last thing we did is make things simple. If anything, bringing in Lance and all these guys, I mean, was anything but simple. It was the most complicated you could probably make.
I mean, Frank Vogel and Lance, they got a relationship.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, Michael Jordan's going to have a lot of money to tinker with, so maybe he wants to throw some more.
No, actually, sadly, he won't. Even their cap is set up so badly. Who I think it was Bobby Marks from ESPN had a tweet about their cap situation, even with Kemba leaving. It's still a mess.
Yeah. Well, isn't that why Max Kellerman always calls Michael Jordan the MJ of bad owners?
I mean, look, we've seen over, whether you're talking about Michael Jordan as an owner and as an exec or Magic as a president of basketball operations, you can be brilliant at one thing. That doesn't always mean you're going to be brilliant at everything. Some guys are the exception to prove the rule. Jerry West was pretty damn good at everything he tries, but not everyone's going to be that guy.
Of course. Well, I mean, I hope you're ready because if Kawhi signs, a little birdie told me that you would be drinking the Kool Aid through a beer bong. So
I kind of feel like I have to. Like I said in this piece, because the Lakers exceptionalism thing, I've always found. I mean, not even really from fans. Fans can do whatever they want, but I've felt like that there's an air and belief of Lakers exceptionalism inside the building. And I think that can be arrogant in a way that's laughable or even destructive. Yeah. But if after what's happened over the last 6 months and in really the chaos that's gone on from the trade deadline to the way the season played out to Magic's resignation to the train wreck that was the coaching search to all these different things, and the Lakers end up with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Kawhi Leonard. Okay, I'm in. It exists. Lakers exceptionalism exists. There's some type of higher power at play here. Whatever. It's the poltergeist ghosts or something. You don't mess with those spirits. And I said, if that happens, I will drink the purple and gold Kool Aid through a beer bong. It's important to remember, I wrote this piece before they had 32 million in cash.
Oh, don't throw any disclaimers.
No. I'm going to do it. Look, man, I will find some purple Kool-Aid and some goldish Kool-Aid, I guess, mix it together. and get a beer funnel, and I'll be a man of my word.
All right, cool. Would you do it on Showtime Forum?
I'll do it somewhere.
Ah.
If nothing else, you guys can be there for the filming. I don't know if I'm going to give away the exclusive rights yet.
We'll aggregate it for you. How about that? Go.
Yeah.
Well, you know how everyone at ESPN loves the aggregators.
I know, right? Yeah, especially lately. No, I'm glad this whole front office debacle, is just behind us. We knew that if we
let's not
somehow
get
behind,
ahead.
somehow behind.
There's that great line that the Wolf has in Pulp Fiction that's not really repeatable. Let's not start.
Yeah.
But look,
now we can have a little bit, I guess, of a celebration. A little bit.
The hard work is coming. Whether you're talking about selling a guy like a Kawhi Leonard or Jimmy Butler on the deal, or if, say, you don't get any of those guys, having to build a roster that makes sense. That's really the hard work for Rob Pelinka in this front office. I don't want to give him no credit for the Anthony Davis deal because I don't think that's fair. But the truth is, a lot of that was engineered by Clutch and Rich Paul and Anthony Davis and LeBron, applying extreme pressure over the course of last year and this offseason to a point where they actually destabilized two organizations in order to make this happen.
Yeah.
So, a lot of that goes to the outside forces involved with Clutch, and Rob Pelinka came up with a deal that worked for David Griffin, who's a good general manager. So again, Pelinka shouldn't go without any credit because I don't think that's fair.
Of course.
But I also don't think it's accurate to say that the whole credit should go to him.
No,
but
of course.
Depending on how this roster gets created, there's a very good chance that, you're either going to be pointing the finger at Rob Pelinka or you're going to be giving him a huge high five. Because again, this is where the difficult work comes in. And if Rob Pelinka walks away, July 6th, July 8th, with a roster that makes sense, and even if, say, you get that star, you see the way he's filling in around those guys, then he should get credit. And it does start to, it starts to lessen some of those concerns that I think have been merited.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Yep. You know what we're hoping for is the Damon Jones bit that they were playing on Mason Island, super mega. That's what we're hoping for here.
Man, wow, this could really end up the summer of Damon Jones as much as Rob Pelinka. He was out. It's Rob Pelinka, Damon Jones, and Greg Bergman as like the three people who are going to be seen as like the oracles of Kawhi and the Lakers.
Yeah, there you go.
There's going to be a lot of people drinking that Kool Aid with you, though.
Well, we're going to be seeing Berg bombs. Like every time Bergman announces anything, people are gonna take it with the same seriousness as a Woj bomb.
Oh.
Don't let it get to his head, man. Don't hype him up too much.
We may be too late already.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's already convinced of this. Like he's dug in that this is going to happen.
Hey, you got to speak it into existence, like LeVar Ball. I know Greg is a big LeVar Ball guy, so he's subscribing to the motto.
Well, if you listen to LeVar, now he actually was playing the opposite game. He wanted Lonzo to go to New Orleans.
Of course.
I mean, this was just he spoke it into existence by trying to speak it against existence. I guess.
Yeah. Reverse existence.
Yes.
That's how things work. Yeah.
This is, I believe, fifth dimensional chess. This is where the real grandmasters of the chess game play.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that with my kids when I get home, see if that works somehow.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. I won't be holding my breath.
No, reverse psychology with kids is overrated.
Yeah. Well, as a parent, they never think they think everything you say has no bearing or anything like that. So.
Yeah, they're also smarter than we give them credit.
Oh, of course. But, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. I know you're a little bit on a time constraint as well, so we appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, guys.
Obviously, you're welcome on whenever Greg harasses you to get on here, of course, So
next couple days might be busy, I'm not going to lie.
Maybe a little bit, right? Especially maybe Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Domingo Gigante. Everyone needs to be tuning in.
Oh, yeah.
ESPNLA, beginning at 3 o'clock Pacific.
Cue the Mason music. Oh, man. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. Again, if you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, check out Andy's article in The Athletic. Great piece. Obviously, it was before this whole thing happened today, but still, nonetheless, a great piece. And if you guys Again, if you want to drop a line and reach us at Showtime Forum, you can reach us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Andy, anything you want to say before we get off?
Yeah, appreciate the time. Appreciate you having me on, man. Thanks.
All right, no problem, man. I appreciate it. And again, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Anchor. We don't care whatever you listen on. Just listen, please. We are here. We're begging you. We're begging you. We don't get a lot of play. We wish we can get some plugs on ESPNLA, but those guys don't really.
I've been doing it. I've actually been doing it.
Yeah, he's been all over the place. This is the right here that we're talking.
I'm busting.
We're pretty good with Showtime Forum on the station.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Showtime Forum's like a daily thing now. I mean,
it is.
I'm telling you, I bet
we may promote it more than our own content at this point.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Greg, maybe we need to get a Showtime Forum segment. Fast Track might need to be replaced.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Wouldn't go that far.
No, okay. Well, I'll stop where I'm at then. Well, either way, thank you again, Andy. I appreciate you being on, man, and we'll catch everybody out there next week.
All right, for sure.
She last night.